Okay, welcome back to Battlebots previews and predictions. This is going to be for episode 3, and yes, I finally have an intro. We did it, guys, we got there. Before we get into episode 3, let's take a quick look back at episode 2. We had some controversy, we had a couple of upsets. I only got 4 out of 7 correct, which is a bit of a shame, but that's okay, I'll take it. I think the main mistake that I made was assuming that Core Viper wouldn't come in with a wedge. When I saw the wedge, I knew I'd made a mistake. When I saw the speed, I knew it was a big mistake. That robot is probably set up to get into the top 32 this season, to be honest. And other than that, I think we really saw what Hydra was capable of. Can't wait to see that one in action more. Now we know that it can take on the elite vertical spinners. No shade to Warhogz there, but Witch Doctor is in another league and Hydra beat it. Alright, let's get on to episode 3. First battle up, a fight between two veteran teams. It's Caustic Creations with Copperhead versus Robotic Death Company and Gigabyte. Zach Goff has been competing for a long time. Before Battlebots, he was most famous for the middleweight Unmakerbot, which took Robo Games by storm. His Battlebots career started in Season 2 when he brought Poison Arrow. He made a surprise run all the way to the top 8, and was only beaten after meeting the eventual runner-ups Bombshell. Zach then repainted Poison Arrow, brought it over to China, and called it Spicy Newt, where it made the semi-finals in the Clashbots tournament. After missing Season 3, he returned in Season 4 with a new machine called Copperhead, and while it showed a lot of potential, going 2-2 in the main season against some impressive robots, and ultimately coming unstuck against Son of Waiachi in a play-in match, it showed that there was a lot of improvement to do, so we'll see if that improvement has been made this season. John Reid and Robotic Death Company have a similar history. Megabyte gained its fame in non-televised tournaments, such as 2009 Battlebots and Robo Games. Megabyte has also been brought over to China to compete in King of Bots, and this is fighting robots. The team started Battlebots in Season 2 with their robot Invader, which didn't make it very far, but they came back with Gigabyte, and much like Copperhead last season, showed a lot of potential, however also showed that there was a lot of improvement to be made. This robot's power has been on display from the moment it took to the box, however, certain things just haven't gone their way. It is a surprise that it hasn't made the top 16 in the past 2 years, but reliability issues and unfavourable matchups have put paid to Gigabyte's hopes in the past. I think Gigabyte, and in fact Copperhead as well, they both have to be top 32 robots this season. When it comes to the actual battle, we know that Copperhead has had trouble against full body spinners. Despite Zach Goff's impressive victory against Son of Waiachi back in Season 2 with Poison Arrow, this new machine in Copperhead ended up losing to Son of Waiachi in a play-in match, as I mentioned before. Not only that, but it also lost to Kronos, an up-and-coming full-body spinner that isn't yet proven. This was definitely Kronos' best victory by far, but it came at the expense of Zach Goff and showed that his machine is quite vulnerable to those horizontal attacks. Gigabyte is striving to become the king of full-body spinners, and we haven't seen a full-body spinner make it to the top 16 unless you count Son of Waiachi, which is more of an overhead spinner. This is the sort of victory that Gigabyte needs to pull off. Copperhead is a quality machine that has shown potential, however, reliability issues and seems to be a favourable matchup for Gigabyte, despite the machine of Robotic Death Company showing vulnerability to vertical spinners in the past. It's always difficult to judge where these chaotic hits between a vertical spinner and a horizontal spinner are going to end up. But if we look on past performance, it seems that Copperhead just isn't able to take those hits and remain standing for the full 3 minutes. So while it wouldn't entirely surprise me if Gigabyte is thrown around the ring by Copperhead and ends up flipped over, I'm actually going to give this one to Gigabyte, and I'm going to give it to them by knockout just on the performance of Copperhead against full body spinners in the past. Last season, captain of Team Hammer Time Jerry Clarkin decided that this would be his last year. He brought a new and improved SubZero to the battle box, yet despite it looking a lot more sleek than previous versions, it ended up only getting the one win. SubZero was then sold to and improved by Logan Davis, who has driven SubZero before, but not this version. It's looking fairly similar to last season, just a bit more refined, boasting a more powerful pneumatic flipper than last season, so we'll see how that goes. Opposed to this robot that's been built and developed over the past few years, we have JackPot, a robot that has been built and developed over the past 4 weeks. The body is a low box shape and it's got a really large diamond-shaped twin spinning weapon. And as we can see from these test videos, the weapon is powerful and the robot is quite fast. The team is captained by Jeff Waters. It's from Las Vegas, Nevada, and that is obviously where the robot gets its theme from. I'm really looking forward to seeing this robot in the battle box. It looks quite scary, despite having only been built over the past 4 weeks. I also think that out of all the newcomers that we've seen so far, JackPot is one of the more promising, and we may see it in the top 32. So historically, SubZero has struggled against vertical spinners. It, in fact, has never even beaten one. And perhaps this is its chance. JackPot is an entirely new machine. It looks like it's going to be awkward if it gets flipped over. However, it does have a self-righting mechanism that works moderately quickly. So unless SubZero can push its advantage when it gets the flip on JackPot, its opponent might be right back on its wheels before Logan Davis can get the chance. But with that said, with such a large vertical spinning weapon, if SubZero can get it into a position where that weapon hits the floor or the wall, which is likely given it's a flipper, JackPot may end up doing more damage to itself than to SubZero. However, this robot does look fast, it does look agile, and despite them being first-time drivers and perhaps not used to the gyroscopic forces of a vertical spinner, if that thing is vaguely pointed at SubZero, it's going to do a lot of damage. SubZero's never been the fastest robot. I think JackPot can outpace it, and if it can get around the sides and the back, well, SubZero doesn't have the best streak when it comes to reliability. So I don't see this quite being like SubZero's first fight last season against Cobalt. However, I think JackPot will actually end up having the edge and will defeat this veteran team by a matter of knockout. So SubZero is one of those robots that can benefit from the main tournament going from a top 16 to a top 32 this year. Another of those robots is Gemini.
On St Leonard's on Sea, East Sussex, Gemini.
Yep, Gemini. Like SubZero, this is a robot that we've seen for a few seasons now, however is really yet to hit their stride. Ace Shalander brought his multibot to Season 2, and ever since then, Gemini has been fighting undercard matches quite consistently and has rarely featured in fights televised on the show. Despite a 2-2 record last season, the strength of schedule for Gemini just wasn't there, and even victories against Mammoth and SubZero weren't enough to see it even in a play-in match. Ace Shalander has made a big change to Gemini this season. We're used to seeing it as a multibot, yet for some of the battles this season, he's planning it to enter it as a single heavyweight robot. Enter the Big Boy Pants. The Big Boy Pants are a wedge/set of armor that can be bolted onto one of the Geminis, meaning it can only enter as the one robot. Now, I'm not sure if this will be a 250-pound robot. It would be quite amusing if it was, since that would mean the Big Boy Pants weigh 125 kilograms, which would be kind of ridiculous, but I hope it is. I hope that's what it is. We'll see. This is done essentially due to the fragility of Gemini, and also the fact that they keep running into one another when they try and attack. Gemini is going up against a new gen MIT team led by Alex Hattori and their robot Uppercut. Uppercut burst onto the scene last season, winning 3 out of its 4 regular season fights and winning a play-in rumble to get the 16th seed and a fight against Byte Force. Of course, it lost this fight, however, it was a stellar debut season for this team. I think the underreported story for Uppercut was its fairly slow spin-up time on its vertical spinning fist. They've most definitely remedied that issue, as seen in this test box video, and it looks scary. I predict Uppercut will have a great season this time around. As for its fight against Gemini, we'll assume that Gemini is going in sporting its big boy pants and going in with just the one robot. If so, I think Ace Shalander will be best served going wedge first into Uppercut, like Breakerbox did last season, exposing Uppercut's weakness to being pushed around by a wedge. While Uppercut did end up winning that fight, it was more due to Breakerbox burning up, and it only really landed 1 or 2 significant hits. If Ace Shalander can take advantage of this weakness, then he'll have a really good shot at beating Uppercut. The weapon on Gemini also looks much improved, so if Ace is able to unbalance Uppercut, he's got a nasty bite he can deliver when the chance arises. However, with the much faster weapon spin-up time for Uppercut, any hit that it gets a chance to land will do significant damage, or at least throw Gemini high into the air.
Wait for it, wait for the hit.
If Uppercut gets Gemini over once, the wedge is inverted and becomes essentially useless, and Gemini is vulnerable from basically any angle at that point. I'm going to assume that Gemini is going to be quite durable with those big boy pants on, and Uppercut will probably struggle to finish it off. However, I reckon it'll get the hits in, it'll be sending Gemini skyward on more than one occasion, especially if Ace Shalander slips up and tries to get too aggressive with his own weapon. And I'm going to give the win to Uppercut by judge's decision rather than a knockout. John Reid is back, responsible for some of the most destructive axe and hammer robots we have ever seen, dating all the way back, of course, to Kilohertz, which competed in classic Battlebots, in classic Robot Wars. Out of classic Robot Wars also came Team Hertz's construction, Terahertz, perhaps their most famous robot, which competed all throughout the Dark Ages and into the reboot of Robot Wars. John Reid has also competed in China at King of Bots, and this is fighting robots with a robot called Tantrum. And of course, perhaps more famously to some of you guys, he has brought Beta to Battlebots, an incredibly durable hammer bot, and one that's actually been able to score knockouts with its hammer in the past. I also want to make special mention to Gabriel Stroud, another alum of classic Robot Wars, back when he had Sabretooth. A much improved version of Sabretooth showed up in the Robot Wars reboot and even beat Terahertz at one point. He joined John Reid on his adventure over to China with Tantrum, and now he's back by his side again for BattleBots Season 5, after having actually competed in Season 4 of BattleBots alongside Hal Rucker with Duck. The main visible change that has been made to Beta is that it looks like the drive wheels have been moved to the very back of the robot. It's hard to tell from these photos and the ones on Facebook whether or not there are wheels in the actual middle of the robot, but I suppose we'll probably see. John Reid is going up against Victor Soto for the first time, the builder of Rotator. We've seen Rotator for a few seasons now, and we've seen it deploy a number of configurations.
We're actually going to change our configuration again to a plow.
The classic being the palindromic disc on the top, disc on the bottom system. But we only saw that once last season against Blacksmith. Rotator was disappointing in Season 2, but it hit its stride in Season 3 and really announced itself with wins against robots such as Scorpios and Icewave. Season 4, it went from strength to strength once more, defeating the mighty Tombstone, one of the most famous upsets of the past few years. Despite that, it didn't actually end up making the top 16, losing in a play-in match against Blacksmith. Rotator is back this season, and I have no idea what different configurations they've got. The BattleBots website shows it with its single bar spinner in an undercutter position. For this fight against Beta, I'd imagine the best configuration for Rotator would be the twin discs that we saw Rotator as originally, but we'll see if that's what they do. I'm not sure. I mean, the last time they fought a hammerbot like Beta, it was with that configuration, and it ended up being a loss to Blacksmith, as I said. Either way, Rotator's going to be a horizontal spinner, and Beta, I think, has a decent shot at beating it, given the fact that the one horizontal spinner it did fight against in its season back in 2016 was Tombstone, and it only lost narrowly on a judge's decision. Beta really took it up to Tombstone in that fight, and I don't know if Rotator, unless it can get over the top and hit Beta's weapon mechanism, or damage the polycarbonate armor on top, I'm not sure if Rotator can actually damage Beta at all. Expect the weapon on Beta this season to be improved, and if that is indeed the case, well, I think Rotator's gonna take quite a few hits, and it might even get knocked out by it. It had some reliability issues in the past. Those, I think, are a thing of the past now. However, anything can get rattled loose when Beta smashes it. I still think this will probably go the distance. I don't think Rotator will get knocked out. I don't think Beta will get knocked out. But I'm going to go for Beta on a judge's decision. I just don't see Rotator doing as much damage as Tombstone did back in Season 2. Now we move on to a battle between two teams with completely antithetical names. Team Seems Reasonable versus Team Questionable Designs. First up we have Seems Reasonable and Aaron Hill, the captain of the team, and their robot Tantrum. We saw Tantrum in Season 3 debut with a spring-loaded flipper weapon. They quickly abandoned that and decided to go all in on the boxing theme and design a punching vertical spinner. In Season 4, that was a little underwhelming. It didn't quite work out the way they hoped it would.
Tell you what, the puncher is leaving something to be desired.
But that's not where the story ends. Seems Reasonable went over to China and competed in King of Bots 2 under the name Boxing Champion, and this is where the punching vertical spinner really started to show its strength. Boxing Champion went 3-2, including a victory over Dragon King aka Red Devil, and they only lost to the reigning champions Spectre aka Quantum, and the eventual champions Vulcan. So all in all, a pretty good record for this underdog of the ring. Valkyrie is another robot that debuted in Season 3. Leanne Cushing brought this undercutter spinner that slowly yet surely gained momentum throughout Season 3, culminating in an appearance in the Last Chance Rumble. It lost in that, however, things were looking bright. She then returned in Season 4, and Valkyrie went 3-1 in the main season, and was looked set up for a deep run. However, they were stopped by Quantum. They are back now with a wider array of weapon options and ready to take on Tantrum. Tantrum will most likely fit their wedge option onto the front of their machine, whereas Valkyrie, I suspect, will debut their new weapon, Mr. Cavity. Now they have 6 to choose from, and they're probably keen to show off Glory, but I think Glory is perhaps for going up against horizontal spinners. Mr. Cavity is a spin, no pun intended, on their old reliable Dr. Tooth. The difference here is that it's got a sharper tooth and is able to cut through wedges more effectively, or even throw robots into the air if it's able to get underneath them. The advantage that I think Tantrum will find is that Valkyrie has a weakness to vertical spinners that are able to get underneath it on a consistent basis. It lost against Hypershock in Season 4, it lost against Lockjaw in Season 3, and both of these fights were occasions when Valkyrie found herself completely off balance and unable to take the measured approach she usually likes to a fight. If Tantrum can rush in, get a successful punch off on Valkyrie very early in, a lot like the Hypershock fight, I think Valkyrie is going to find herself on the back foot, and if successfully inverted, I reckon Tantrum might have the fight right from that point. The best chance that Valkyrie has, in my opinion, is ripping that wedge off, and we haven't seen that weapon yet, so we don't know how effective it's going to be at cutting through solid metal. So in this matchup, I'm actually happy to tip the upset. I reckon Tantrum will win this, and I reckon they'll do it by KO. Plus I haven't really tipped many upsets so far. Now, we haven't seen many Indian teams compete in robot combat, and this is an Indian crossed Canadian team that we're seeing here in Atom 94. Yash Desmukh has brought a good-looking robot to Battlebots. It's your standard two-wheeled vertical spinner. The spinner itself is the classic double disc spinner, accompanied by a couple of wedges, so it is a fairly standard design. I love the electric blue paintwork on the black background. So given the design of this robot is quite conventional, I think the main concern here is the build quality. Now, I'm no expert on how to actually build a robot, what actually looks like it is solid, but this robot does look solid, just to my somewhat untrained eye. But given it is their first competition, that is the main question that I have. Big Dill is a new robot from a team with an experienced background. Manuel Carrillo has fought alongside the intrinsically related teams Western Allied Robotics and Bad Kitty, so the teams that brought us Warhawk and Mad Catter. This year he's brought a robot with a very similar frame and a weapon that is reminiscent of Mike Jeffries' lightweight robot Nyx. But I'm sure that's not the only robot that has had this style of weapon. In fact, it says on the Battlebots page that Big Dill is a mashup of various robots that Emmanuel has worked on over the years, so I wouldn't be surprised if he had a a robot with a similar weapon as well. As I said, the frame is similar to that of Warhogz and Mad Catter, so we can expect it to be similarly shock resistant, modular, and easily repairable. But that could also mean easily split apart. So looking at this fight, I think, honestly, and I'll say it right off the bat, experience will win the day. I can see the comparison here between Emmanuel and Kevin Milcheski from last episode, who brought Claw Viper, very similar robot to Big Dill, as a captain with experience in many other teams and other competitions, of course. While Atom and its weapon looks utterly vicious, I can see Big Dill completely avoiding that for a majority of the match. I can see it go in with the lifter raised, or perhaps just with a full-on wedge attachment, and perhaps have the lifter come down almost as a clamper, just to prevent damage to it. If Atom gets to the sides, then it might be trouble for Big Dill, but I reckon the driving experience here for Big Dill will win the day. I'm going to say this is going to be a judge's decision, and Big Dill will win. Well, we knew it from when he was being interviewed by the commentators in episode 1, but Will Bales is back, and so is Hypershock, and so is my excitement. Well, my excitement's always been here. This has been a pretty good episode to review, but it grows. It grows with Hypershock. It was my favorite robot from back in Season 1, and it's only gone from strength to strength from there, except Season 3. Anyway, it's been a storied past for Hypershock. They took it up to the eventual champions, Byte Force, all the way back in Season 1. They used a rake to great effect in Season 2, famously had their guts spilled in Season 3, and the only robot they ended up beating was a cheeseburger. But I think they salvaged their reputation pretty well in Season 4, going 3-2 and defeating some impressive robots such as Valkyrie and Monsoon. The flip side of this fight is very different. Sam McAmis quietly developed this heavyweight machine away from Battlebots, away from the spotlight. He was in Robo Games, he's been at the Orlando Maker Faire, he's defeated some impressive robots such as Cataclysm, aka Warhawk, and Toro Maximus, aka Minotaur, in Robo Games 2018. He was then accepted on Battlebots 2019, painted Gruff black, and added a flamethrower. Unfortunately, he only went 1-3 in this season. However, I think we all saw Gruff for what it really is. A really tough, stout-hearted machine. A robot that rarely gets KO'd and is able to take it up to the absolute best spinners in all of robot combat, such as endgames, such as Tombstone. Sam is now back to right what was a very unflattering 1-3 record, and I'm very keen to see if he can do better. A main event against Hypershock is the perfect opportunity for him to do this. It's a high quality, well experienced machine, and who wouldn't love some fluoro yellow bits and pieces on the mantelpiece. So this fight is all about the ground game and all about driving. We'll see who will win the ground game. I don't know. It's obviously always very difficult to tell until they actually hit each other. If Hypershock wins the ground game, I don't think there's much that Gruff can actually do to counter it. Since Will Bales is such a good driver, Gruff may be able to get around to the sides occasionally, but it won't be all the time, and I think it'll sustain way too much damage on the occasions that Hypershock is able to get underneath Gruff. However, if Gruff is able to get under Hypershock, that can really put Hypershock off. It's a fast machine, it will probably flip itself over on Gruff's wedge like it did against Free Shipping back in Season 3, and from that point Gruff will be able to take control of the fight pretty easily. Vertical spinners have had trouble getting underneath Gruff historically. However, in the two fights last season against Endgame and Copperhead, these were still losses for Gruff, despite both of those robots struggling to get underneath. So while you gotta respect Gruff, you really have to. It's gonna be a really tough robot for Hypershock to beat. So I think no matter what, this fight will probably go the distance, assuming that Hypershock will continue to be just as reliable as it was last season. But having said that, I think Hypershock will just do too much damage to Gruff in the eyes of the judges, and that will be the main factor in the decision making. So I'm going to say Hypershock will win this main event by a judge's decision. Alright, thank you guys so much for watching once again. This has been a very fun episode to predict. I can't wait to watch it. We got some great battles lined up, I reckon. I'm particularly looking forward to Rotator versus Beta, to be honest. I can't wait to see beta again. But yes, once again, my predictions are Gigabyte by KO, JackPot by KO, Uppercut by judge's decision, Beta by judge's decision, Tantrum by KO, Big Dill by judge's decision, and Hypershock by judge's decision. Right, well, I will see you in episode 4. I don't know if I'll get episode 4 done, unfortunately. We're just going to have to see. It is, of course, going to be Christmas, and I have Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday to do this on usual weeks, but I will only have Tuesday and Wednesday to do this, I believe. I will probably die if I try and do this in 2 days, but we'll see. Maybe I'll do like a truncated version. Not sure. So apologies if I can't get episode 4 done, or if it's just a kind of a meh version of it. We'll have to see. So anyway, give this video a thumb of some variety, up, down, sideways. Do a subscribe if you wish to see more of these, and have a bloody good one.